It was the 20th October 1868 when Edward W. Clark and his wife Mary Mead Clark set out on their journey in Bark Pearl, a trading vessel, all the way from Boston via Cape of Good Hope to Calcutta. After a short halt in Calcutta, they set out on a tedious and wild journey via different modes of transport, by rail, by slow boats, on elephants, by native boats, and on ponies, to finally reach their destination, Sibsagar. They were to relieve Reverend W. Ward, who was taking a furlough to America. While at Sibsagar, the Clarks came across some Nagas who were searching for food. The Clarks had heard of the barbaric darkness, headhunting, and the indigenous culture in the hills. This increased their burden for the Nagas, and Mr. Clark sought for permission to enter into their territory. The English government replied that Clark could enter the Naga wilds at his own risk. He would receive no protection from the British arms. His own Home Mission Board was hesitant to approve his plan. But God had a sovereign plan for the Nagas. Mr. Clark had with him Godula, an Assamese evangelist and schoolteacher, whose enthusiastic spirit enabled Mr. Clark to send him on his first venture into the Naga hills amongst the tribes. With the help of Subong Merin, a native of Molunkimong village, Godula familiarized himself with their culture and a few words of the native tongue. Upon entry, he declared to them he was a teacher of a new religion. They didn't care initially, but they were soon drawn to his sweet, melodious voice as he sang gospel hymns in Assamese. Slowly their hearts opened to embrace him. God works in mysterious ways. In a few months, he returned to Sibsagar with 9 Nagas from the Deka Hemong village who were ready to follow Jesus. They were baptized by Mr. Clark on 11th November 1872. And in December, Mr. Clark himself went up to the village to baptize 15 more Nagas on 23rd December 1872. Praises arose to the Most High God, and the Lord's Supper was partaken as the first church was established on Naga soil. This is an important day in Naga history. Mr. Clark knew his calling, his life work was to be with the Nagas henceforth. Meanwhile, Reverend A.K. Gurney was sent to carry on the work laid down by Dr. Ward, and soon after his arrival, Mr. Clark reported himself at Deka Hemong in the hills in March 1876. Mr. Clark set up his mission station here until it was shifted to Impur in 1894, which is presently known as the Ao Baptist Aroko Mongdang. And in 1878, Mrs. Mary Mead Clark set up a school in Malungyim Sen. While some villagers felt that Clark could not be trusted because he had the same white face as the British military, others were eager to adopt this new religion. You see, the Nagas were opposed to anything that would promote alliance with the encroaching British power. Life for the Clarks was not without troubles. The journey through the villages and their lifestyle wasn't easy or luxurious. For instance, windows were just openings or cuts in the walls with a piece of mat hung across as security. 4 timber sticks tied together and lit was their heater. When thatched grass wasn't available for roofing, they had to use long, slender leaves bound together. It did help with the rains at times, but definitely not with the strong winds. More of Mr. and Mrs. Clark's life in Assam and the Naga Hills can be found in Mrs. Clark's book called A Corner in India. Don't forget to get a copy of it. It's very interesting. Mr. Clark concentrated on developing a good knowledge of the language, the culture, character, and medicine. This was very important for the people to open their doors for Mr. Clark and enabled him to win souls. He also prayed for the sick, and whenever someone was healed, it enabled him to renounce their animal sacrifices and other rituals and follow Jesus Christ. The Nagas were aware that accepting Christ meant giving up their old ancestral customs that they so reverentially held on to. They had to get rid of the skulls in their houses and drastically change their social life. The missionaries' teaching and presence spread like wildfire from one mountain peak to another, and everyone were intrigued and suspicious as well. They were aware that this new religion also brought education, sanitation, and other benefits to their small economy. Well, the Clarks continued to trust in the Lord alone for protection and pursue on the holy calling upon their lives. It was this love of Jesus that ended the practice of headhunting and brought a paradigm shift to the many other practices they followed. Many were keen to hear more about the story of the creation, all the way down to Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. They were keen to serve the true God. The Clarks toured among the villages, visiting churches and schools, and carried the gospel to hundreds of pagan warriors. The word of the Lord continued to grow and gain momentum, even as other missionaries sowed the seed on Naga soil and plowed the land faithfully, bringing a harvest unto the Lord. Gospels were being translated and printed. Many were baptized, many were educated, and many began living transformed lives. Soon after the arrival of Reverend and Mrs. Dowd in 1901, the Clarks were set to leave the hills. On 28 February 1901, the Clarks set on their homeward journey, once again on an adventurous trip on ponies, by dog carts, narrow gauge rail, steamer vessel, and finally on the steamship line, the P&O, from which they landed safely in Old England. Mr. Clark died on 24th June 1913 at the ripe age of 83. The Clarks are a true testimony of God's mighty work and His faithfulness to a people called out from darkness. Do you know what you are called for? Pray and ask Jesus to reveal His sovereign plan in your life. Follow Him obediently, and you will receive your great reward in heaven. God bless you.